Good afternoon and welcome to The Backlash. I'm your host, David J. Riley. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is Monday, March 9th, Hangover Squad check-in. Where are we at, guys? We've got a great guest for you today. Really looking forward to the conversation. Please, before we get too far afield, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media. We are on X at Real Backlash. Of course, our website, thebacklash.net. You can get all of our updates there. You can support the show on subscribestar.com/thebacklash, patreon.com/thebacklash. You can find all of our platforms at thebacklash.net/subscribe. Please send in any super chats, questions for me or the guest. You can do that at thebacklash.net/superchat, or you could send it in on our Rumble channel at Backlash Podcast, or like a real super chat over on our YouTube. So thank you so much for liking, for sharing, for sticking with us here at The Backlash. Got to give a brief shout out to our sponsors, odggsupply.com. Whether you're going tactical bug out mode or blanky mode, they've got you covered with time-tested tactical gear. Above Time Coffee Roasters at AboveTimeCoffee.com. White Positive, small batch, hand-roasted coffee. Antelope Hill Publishing, fighting to keep history alive with pro-white content. Of course, IdahoTallow.com, soap and skincare products without endocrine disruptors, and AtlasBullion.com/backlash if you're looking for gold or silver. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a mouthful. We've got all of the contractual obligations out of the way. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest, Jose Niño. Jose Niño is a journalist. He writes, actually, let me pull it up. He's a writer based in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's currently the deputy editor of Headline USA. You can get a hold of him on Facebook or Twitter. Subscribe to his Substack, Jose Niño Unfiltered. Jose, thank you so much for joining us today.
A pleasure to be here, Dave.
How long have you been doing this type of stuff? Investigative, kind of dissident journalism. How did you get involved in that?
I would say now for the better part of 6 years or so. Yeah, 6 to 7 years. But I've been in the political game now for 2 decades in some capacity. I've worked on campaigns, congressional, presidential campaigns, and I had a stint as an email marketer / lobbyist for a gun rights organization before. So I know how like the system works, how the sausage is made on the inside. And also I've done plenty of writing as well too. I think writing has been a consistent theme of my career, whether it's copywriting to investigative journalism or anything like long form related. Yeah, that's my career in a nutshell.
Nice. Yeah, so this is his Twitter account. You can go follow him over there, Jose Al Niño, the website that he works for, Headline USA. Of course, Ken Silva. We've talked about him on this program a lot. Ken Silva, one of the best journalists for kind of breaking apart Operation Gladio. He did a lot of work on the assassination attempts of Donald Trump during the 2024 campaign. Really love his stuff. And I've been loving your stuff too. I've been seeing you make the rounds. Your Substack has been popping off. That is josealnino.org. And I saw, let's just get into this. There was a article that I saw you just released yesterday, just 22 hours ago. Villains of Judea, Steve Feinberg, the Hebrew hidden hand behind Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. What do we need to know about Steve Feinberg and, frankly, the Department of War when it comes to what's been going on in Iran?
This guy, Steve Feinberg, is interesting because he is like the Paul Wolfowitz, if you will, of the Trump administration, in that he occupies the position of Deputy Defense Secretary ostensibly under Pete Hegseth as the chief of the Department of War. But this guy is a very has had a low profile in terms of the organized Jewish community. And he's actually a multi-billionaire. He has an estimated net worth of $5 billion and is a known donor to Zionist organizations like the American Jewish Committee. He's donated various six-figure grants to that But he, unlike other front-facing members of organized Jewry, whether it's like Jonathan Greenblatt, Ronald Lauder, who I also profiled as well, this guy was mostly keeping his head down as he built his private equity firm, Cerberus Capital Management, which specialized in distressed assets and buying and selling these assets. And that's how he accumulated his wealth over the years. And then he's also been like involved as well in turning like a Catholic hospital system in Steward Healthcare and just extracted like hundreds of millions of dividends and fees from that effectively left behind this entire collapsing like 31 hospital network that in the end filed for bankruptcy without like approximately $9 billion in liabilities. He also, curiously, there's a security group that this Cerberus Capital Management owned called Tier 1, where Tier 1 group that trained members of the Saudi Arabians kill team that eventually murdered the journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
Oh, wow.
And that created a whole diplomatic controversy there. And one thing about this guy is that he's obviously of Jewish extraction, is that he, I would argue, is one of the more powerful and low profile figures in the Trump administration.
Mm-hmm.
And I argue that he is the Hebraic hidden hand, if you will, that he is like the sovereign, because in U.S. foreign policy decision making, if it hasn't become abundantly clear, it is organized Jewry that is ultimately calling the shots here. And people like him have been inserted into this type of position to ensure that the racial will to power of the world Jewish community is imposed by U.S. foreign policy decision-making organs and military institutions. That's why they have him there. And he's not, and they have a front goy in Pete Hegseth to do that.
Right. Yeah. It seems like that's kind of how a lot of times these types of people operate. I mean, even with the, what's the name of the guy that they're appointing to the Fed? Kevin Warsh, right?
Yeah.
Kevin Warsh is a goyim. He's a goy, but he is married to Ronald Lauder's daughter. And so you've got this connection from the World Zionist Congress, I think, that Ronald Lauder runs. Kevin Warsh was also very involved with Jeffrey Epstein, of course. But they do this. They put their goyim frontmen on the line, and then they say, "Oh no, see, like the Irish run banking. What are you talking about? It's not the Jews, it's the Irish."
Also of note, Feinberg's was mentioned in like the Epstein files like over 300 times. And one thing about Feinberg that's very interesting when he was running Cerberus Capital Management was that he told all employees to maintain as low of a profile as possible because he did not want any attention like brought to the organization. And that's one of the things too, that when it comes to organized Jewry, there are figures that work behind the scenes that are incredibly powerful, that can amass a lot of wealth or enough contacts to leverage that to capture major institutions. And they work very much in the shadows, and they're not always the most front-facing people. You know, they don't have like 1 million followers on Twitter, Instagram, or any social media profiles. These people are very much making moves behind the scenes, and that's how oftentimes they're able to insinuate themselves in the commanding heights of the economy, the military, and other institutions in the United States.
Yeah, it's insane to see. How has the war in Iran been going? We're entering now the second week of the war. There's been a lot of talk and mixed messaging that's been going and coming and going out of the administration. I think at first, Trump and Hegseth and the people in the Department of War, I think they thought that this was going to be like a quick in and out, like what happened in Venezuela or Operation Midnight Hammer, last year when we bombed Fordow and Ifsahan. It is clearly not going that way.
No, it's not.
It is not going that way. We've seen statements, and I covered some of this last Wednesday, saying that we are prepared to be at war with Iran until September. It went from a couple of days to a couple of weeks to a couple of months, and now it's the better part of a year. What has been going on in Iran? What is the latest update on the war?
I'm not as up to date on like the day-to-day affairs with the Iran conflict, but it's become abundantly clear with these changing timelines that the U.S. may have made some tactical gains, but they have not achieved any strategic objectives. Like the regime change thing has ostensibly failed. Like there's no sign of a collapse of the Iranian government whatsoever. And they can do these decapitation strikes, but the thing that's very clear that is the Iranian system has a lot of checks and balances and people in there that they can insert to replace it. And it's not as top heavy as people think. This isn't like Syria or Libya, which are relatively modern states that had like a strong man like Gaddafi in the Libyan case or Assad in the Syrian case, that if you use like a long war of attrition through sanctions, and then fund rebels and all that, that you can eventually topple it, those type of states. This is a multi-millennia civilization state in Iran that has a very complex bureaucracy, a pretty competent leadership class that is willing to fight, and they do have clear contingencies for maintaining that structure intact whatsoever. And the U.S. is like air bomb. The current campaign they're doing with just relying on air power, they could definitely degrade Iran militarily. They've already done so in certain respects, but I don't think it can cause a regime change. And ultimately, you have to have boots on the ground, because in this obsession with air power or reductionism, where if you just use air power, you just use decapitation strikes and all these key military assets, you still have to have people on the ground, whether it's fifth column, sleeper agents, or even like an external invading force, whether it's like the U.S. or a coalition of other countries. You still have to have that to ultimately affect that. And that's really not materializing thus far. But I do believe, though, when you read a lot of think tanks, and especially Jew for Jew media, they're now kind of pivoting towards a more regime balkanization strategy of trying to promote separatism in Iran and just create like a failed state scenario. That's like the aim. You see like Foundation for Defense of Democracies, those outlets call for that. But even that is not panning out as planned, because a lot of the groups that they would try to activate, like the Kurds or even certain factions of the Balochi movement in Iran, they haven't really played ball now. So this conflict, it looks like it's turning into just a like bungled mess. And then you've got the energy war to the energy component as well, with the closure of the Straits of Hormuz and the just halting of traffic and destruction of oil infrastructure among the Shabbos-Goy Arab states that are aligned with the U.S. and Israel. You will have an unfolding energy crisis, and not to mention the fact that Iran being able to stand on its feet now looks like a viable partner for Russia and China. So they're going to provide intelligence and other forms of military aid to keep it afloat, so they can get the Judeo-American axis bogged down in a conflict. So it's really not looking like there's a clear strategic victory on the horizon anytime soon.
I think you're right about that. We've got some news that has been coming out, and it's weird. I feel like I live in Groundhog Day. X has become completely useless, it seems.
Oh, I've got a theory on that.
Go hit me with it. I mean, besides the obvious fact that, Elon Musk is partnered with this group Authentics, which is an Israeli-based security firm that's like, doxing everybody. But go ahead.
I mean, I've argued for some time that it's very much like an Israeli op, that purchase of it, and it's done as a form of a containment, ultimately for the day like this type of data will arrive when the Israelis are at war with Iran. And I've argued that this is part of the broader Zio populist movement that's not just like the U.S. but also across Europe, where they use the camouflage of like immigration restriction, economic nationalism, and racial grievances to basically disguise what the real agenda is. Judeo-accelerationism. It's a radical Zionist agenda, and I think that's the Twitter purchase is part of the information war of that op.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you, and we can get into that. I know that you put out an article on Judeo-accelerationism, and I did a podcast about this, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, about things like the Reform and Restore Party in the United Kingdom. Like, we're starting to see all of these right-wing coalitions in Europe that are, getting off the ground. And I think that most of that is just a front or a smokescreen for Zionist politics, frankly. But getting back to Iran real quick before we move on to that, the point is, I saw 6 days ago that, was it Ali Khamenei's son was set to become the new supreme leader. And then there was all of this flurry of activity about how, the United States they killed another supreme leader. They killed another one. They're going down the line and killing everybody. But that's not true. We were right when we said it last Wednesday. In fact, Ayatollah Khamenei's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, is now the supreme leader of Iran. He is likely much more hardline than Ali Khamenei was, and he is especially unlikely to negotiate with the United States because this past week he lost his father, his mother, his daughter, his wife, his son-in-law, and his father's granddaughter to these strikes, which is just unbelievable. And if you look at what's actually happening on the ground, it is not exactly regime change flavor. These are protests. These are protests that are happening in Iran over the past several days of Iranians coming out in full support of the new supreme leader. There was another video where they gathered to pledge their allegiance to the new supreme leader. So whatever it is that the United States was attempting to do, insofar as regime change is concerned, they have failed miserably. And furthermore, there's this guy, I forget his name. He's one of the foreign ministers of Iran that's been making the circuits on all of these different interview shows. And he's saying that the Iranians are ready and waiting for the United States to send ground troops. So this is not turning out very well for the United States. Do you have any thoughts or any insights, perhaps, into the new supreme leader of Iran and which track he will take?
Well, the thing is that, like, these bombings, like the bombing of those schoolgirls that killed like well over 160, it's creating rally around the flag effects that I think make a type of like regime change op next to impossible there, especially if they're going to try to do a color revolution or any type of hidden hand or sleeper cell activation, because a lot of the population is just not down with that. And when you do, that's one problem with very air power centric campaigns, is that once you start hitting civilians, the population just gets more hardline. Also, with decapitation strategies as well, in a similar vein, what ends up happening oftentimes is the replacement may end up actually being more radical. Because for those who study the Iranian system, the Ayatollah Khamenei was actually a bit more restrained on the issue of like nuclear weapons and confrontational postures towards the West, whereas his replacement, or even if his son gets whacked or whatever, the replacement may be a person that not only goes for nukes, but just fully aligns with China and Russia and just says, screw it to the West. They're not even going to bother trying to hedge. And that's one of the big problems with these people, with the very Judaized and low IQ people and myopic people that run U.S. foreign policy, is that they don't really take into account. And this very Talmudic Old Testament mindset that they have really clouds their judgment and compels them to take some of the most myopic type of decisions. But yeah, it is turning into a mess where now they're not even ruling out the idea of boots on the ground, which would just be a further disaster and create a big political crisis in the U.S. because that is a clear political failure of Donald Trump, where he explicitly campaigned 2016, 2020, 2024 to keep the country and troops out of foreign wars. But here we are. But if you, for those who have read my work, like the Judeo-accelerationist presidency, they will know, unfortunately, that the Trump and his family, they have been engaged in a multi-decade generational Faustian pact with organized Jewry, and unfortunately, he used the populist aesthetic to disguise what the revealed policy agenda is, and that is make the world safe for Israel world Jewry in general.
What do you think about, something that's been kind of ringing through my ears over the past several weeks? Do you remember in the WikiLeaks emails back in 2016 or 17, there was an email, I believe it was from Hillary Clinton to John Podesta, calling Donald Trump the Pied Piper candidate. Do you remember that?
Vaguely. I'm not as familiar with a lot of those WikiLeaks cables, but I do vaguely remember that.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, what planet do we live on where Hillary Clinton was right about this? I mean, I hate to admit that, but it does seem like Donald Trump was the Pied Piper candidate, all along as he was, bragging about, I'm the pro-peace candidate, running on, and the propaganda number that they pulled on Dearborn, Michigan. I don't know if you got to see any of the leaflets that the campaign was dropping up there, but they were dropping, Genocide Joe leaflets in Dearborn, Michigan to get Muslims to turn out to vote for Donald Trump to end the war in Gaza. And it turns out, the whole time Hillary Clinton was right. Donald Trump was the Pied Piper candidate. And
that's really clipped out of context.
I know, but it's true. It's true. And so now we're sitting here dealing with the breakout of World War III. So what are your thoughts?
Well, this is a recurring theme in American history. Candidates that position themselves as anti-war, you could go from Woodrow Wilson, FDR, even George W. Bush, that complain about certain foreign policy bungles or promising to stay out of a war, but end up going to war because of just the structural factors of the fact that we've been under a Jewish supremacist power configuration for decades, not century. And the thing is, too, when you look at the Hillary Clinton versus like Donald Trump presidential race, it really, like, from a bird's eye view, it's just two factions of Jewry battling out to determine how they're going to use state resources to make the world safe for Jewish supremacy. It's just the differences is like the mechanisms they use, the front goys and all that, but it ultimately leads down the same road because Hillary Clinton herself is a major super hawk, especially with regards to Iran and whatnot. And that's one of the things that the U.S. foreign policy is just completely under the thrall of the Jewish supremacist power configuration, and that's not gonna change anytime soon until that class is just totally overthrown. And that's just the kind of like reality check that a lot of people need to have, that no matter who you vote for, you're gonna get like some type of Likud or some Judeo-accelerationist foreign policy, unfortunately.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. I'm trying to find this the actual email. And I'm not. I'm over here on WikiLeaks, and it is not coming up, but it's out there. I remember reading it. Anyway, yeah. So, how do you think this is going to wind down? There's been several different things that have been floated. Considering that the situation is getting much worse, there have been some pundits that are like, you know what, maybe Donald Trump should just come out and declare victory and move on. And just see if we can extract ourselves from this. Or do you think something like that will happen, or do you think that this administration is just going to go all the way for the Israelis?
Yeah, there is, theoretically speaking, a off-ramp. where they could just say we killed the freaking leader, we degraded Iran militarily, we destroyed a lot of their navy and a lot of their conventional assets, and then just pack up and leave. Unfortunately, we live under the Pan-Judah, so that's just off the table. What's more likely going to happen, my prediction is that once the interceptors and like air defense gets depleted for Israel, and Iran starts just making Israel inhospitable for Jews to like live in, and just do these missile attacks. Once like they're more state of the art, missiles start falling on Tel Aviv, Haifa, and other cities. This is a really small country. I think you will see the U.S., Israel, or both threaten probably the use of nukes to like end that conflict, because Israel has very little strategic depth. Like a very simple like missile barrage that hits it hard could render the state very like dysfunctional. It's really small and has very little to no industrial base. It's a parasitic entity that relies on Gentile nations to provide it military aid, capital stock, also its young men to defend it and defense. So it's a very structurally unstable state, and that means that they will likely go up the escalation ladder really fast if the Iranian missile attacks continue. They start rendering a lot of his infrastructure dysfunctional. And that has major implications too, because that means demographically, a lot of Jews in the diaspora aren't going to be moving to Israel. And also, they could see somewhat of an exodus of skilled Israelis just flee the country, because even after the 12-day war, I saw a poll that appeared on that one Israeli website called Ynet that over 60% of Israelis have signaled that they're considering leaving the country, especially in the wake of October 7th and then the 12-day war. And I mean, this current conflict too is very likely making these people consider options, because a lot of Israelis, for those who don't know, they not only have multiple passports, but they have multiple citizenships, and they know they're on stolen land. So any type of they don't have really strong ties there. So any type of adversity they start facing, where their daily lives get disrupted by the steady diet of Iranian missiles and also missiles from the Axis of Resistance, they're gonna start to like get jittery, and some of these people will start to leave the country. And Israel, unlike other states, they're still in a very existential demographic struggle with the Palestinians. So any type of exodus like that happens could legitimately hamper its ability to function as a normal state. So that's why like the use of nukes is very much on the table.
Wow. Do you think that they'll use nukes? And who would it be? Would it be the United States or Israel or both?
I don't think they'll use it at the end. They'll use a threat of that. And the thing is, it probably, honestly, would probably be Israel. They would be like the ones that break the nuclear taboo, because they'll just say like, oh, U.S. did that against Japan. Why can't we do that? And because we were like existentially threatened. And the thing is, too, Iran is big. I mean, they could kill like 300,000 people, but it's still like a country of 90 million. They still have, despite what the media says, a pretty sizable amount of missile stockpile. So they'll respond. They probably have like a dead man switch for that to just completely unload on it. And that's one of the problems too, is that Israel's lack of strategic depth does render its nuclear deterrent not as effective as other countries, like say the U.S., where it can just disperse a lot of its industrial bases to other parts of the country and all of that. But I think that there will probably, what will end the conflict will be some type of threat from the U.S., Israel, or both. Because this is like the same Judaic entity ultimately on foreign policy affairs that says like, well, if you guys continue, we will consider a nuclear option here. But I think the U.S., the end result is going to be a geoeconomic and geostrategic defeat, in the sense that, for example, they may lose a significant presence of their bases in the Middle East. I think, for example, Bahrain, UAE, and those type of states, they may end up being in a kind of like Iranian sphere of influence, or just much more like BRICS aligned. And some of these bases are just going to get either moved deeper to Saudi Arabia or Jordan, or they may lose that whole presence altogether. Because one thing a lot of these Arab states that made this Faustian bargain with the Judeo-American axis are realizing is they're just getting cocksmacked by the reality is that you are a Shabbos Goy cannon fodder in a crisis between Israel, like in Iran. Like ultimately, the United States will move its military assets to defend the mothership that is Israel, and you guys are left out to dry.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. Now there was something else that I had seen come across my timeline. I was looking for it a little while ago, and I can't see it, but there are a lot of rumors swirling among the OS int types that before the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was murdered and assassinated, that his son, the now current Supreme Leader of Iran, was actually attempting to get his father to reverse the fatwa, the prohibition on nuclear weapons. So for those who are following this but are like unaware for some reason, the Iranians believe that it is immoral to possess and use nuclear weapons. There was a document that was put out decades ago by the Supreme Leader banning the creation of a nuclear bomb, banning anybody from even trying to get one. And it appears as though the new Supreme Leader was actually involved in efforts to lobby his father to reverse that decision. What do you think is the likelihood? Do you think that like North Korea or Russia or China would perhaps provide Iran with a nuke?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because North Korea, as you mentioned there, has kind of shown that the only way to maintain sovereignty, especially when you have a rogue actor like the Judeo-American axis, is to have a nuke. It's like you're a geopolitical plaything if you don't have nukes. But what I think is going to happen is 100%, you can take it to the bank. Iran is just going to go all out with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization with Russia and China. It's going to be more or less in that economic and to a lesser extent the security umbrella. You could see them put them under that umbrella if they don't get nukes per se, like an independent nuclear program. But I do believe that the reformist wing in Iran that has been a moderating factor in Iranian politics, they've been discredited. So you're not going to see any more overtures to the West by Iran. They very likely will pursue a nuclear program or at least get into some more formalized military alliance structure with the Eurasian behemoths like China and Russia.
Yeah, that seems to make sense. And it's also one of those things that I just, as I'm seeing all of these people blah, blah, blahing forever on podcasts and on X and on Fox News. I don't actually watch Fox News, by the way. But I see clips. And, it's people just constantly bitching about Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. It would be awful if the Iranians got a nuclear weapon. It'd be crazy if they, these people are unhinged lunatics, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, meanwhile, I feel like most Americans are still asleep at the wheel on how Israel got their nuclear weapons. There was something called the Apollo Affair, which took place back in the 1960s and 70s, where a guy by the name of Zalman Shapiro, who was over at the Nuclear Materials Equipment Corporation, or NUMEC, because they lost 206 pounds of highly enriched uranium. That uranium was smuggled to Israel, where they used that to create their first nuclear bombs. I feel like people don't know that. And by the way, nuclear Israel, which is a nuclear state, has never declared that it has the bomb. They've denied it. Back when JFK was president, over in Dimona, that's their main nuclear reactor, the Israelis created fake control rooms for the IAEA to come in and look at because they didn't want them actually seeing that they were making bombs. And so you've got this rogue state that has committed genocide since 1948. They've defrauded the United States. They've stolen from us. They have spied on us. But that's not the problem. The problem is the guy that posts that women are like flowers on X. That's the problem. These lunatics can't be allowed to get a nuclear bomb. So it's just crazy. There are some more updates as well coming out of CENTCOM. There are now eight confirmed dead U.S. soldiers because of this incursion. And that is probably going to continue to climb higher and higher. So anyway, it's just not good. It's not good. I don't really see a way out of this where America, there's no going back. I feel like this is kind of like a 9/11 moment. Yeah, this is everything about the world order has changed, is changing, and we'll see. Oil has been going nuts. I think it's at. Hold on, let me see if I can check oil price. That'll take too long. But anyway, oil's been going nuts. I think that the Iranians are saying that it could go to $200 a barrel. That would be like what, a $10 gallon of gas? Over here, if that happened, wouldn't be good. Would not be good. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about. You've got a couple of other articles here that I wanted to go over. Let's see. Let's start, I guess, with this one, and then we can transition maybe into European politics a little bit. I'm not sure if you've written about that, but this article, Donald Trump is.
Oh, yeah, I've written extensively, yes, of that.
Yeah, Donald Trump is a generic Republican in populist clothing. Stop falling for the con and examine the actual record. So, what are we talking about in this article, and maybe I guess how Jews are using the political system to advance their ends?
Well, here's the thing that I try to point out in this article. I see too many political analysts, in my opinion, fall for headlines or talking points that Trump makes, like a Fox News or in the campaign trail, and they don't actually look at his concrete legislative actions or his foreign policy actions and establish a pattern there. Because when you look at that and I noted this from his Supreme Court justice nominations to economic measures like tax cuts and all that, and even the amount of legal migrants that were naturalized under his first term, his agenda is just a typical Republican agenda. There's not much to write home about. This guy's no Pat Buchanan, whether it's on the domestic or the foreign policy fronts. And that's one of the things I pointed out in that article, is that Trump's agenda has actually been really successful for the conservative movement, which is the right wing of the right flank of the Judeo-capitalist order we live under. But as far as like national populism is concerned, the guy has been a strategic failure. Like, he has not accomplished anything of substance. Like I've argued this before, and it may sound blackpilling, but the last best chance the U.S. had for having genuine immigration restriction and foreign policy non-interventionism was in the 90s with Pat Buchanan, but the GOP establishment made sure that he did not get elected. And since then, the immigration battles, foreign policy battles, they've just been constantly been big defeats for middle America. And Trump's immigration measures, some of them are good, at least like in a marginal sense, but they're too little, too late. This is stuff that should have been done, not just yesterday, but decades ago, and they just don't go far enough either. Like, the U.S. desperately needs multi-decade immigration moratoriums, an end to chain migration, birthright citizenship, e-verify, all that. That stuff is not on the menu. And also, keep in mind, this Iran war almost guarantees a defeat for Republicans in the midterms, which will create a divided government. And you can kiss any form of long-term immigration restriction reforms ever being passed. And that's also to note, even in the current configuration in Congress, especially the House, which has a razor-thin Republican majority, that stuff is not even possible then. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's been super interesting over the past couple of weeks, because I get all distracted on foreign policy and stuff like that. But meanwhile, in Idaho, what's been going on that nobody's paying attention to because everybody is on the one side either extremely upset that we're at war again, or on the other side, they're hopping up and down because they think that the rapture is about to happen and that Jesus is coming back with the Jewish Messiah. So you've got these two kind of factions that are extremely distracted. Meanwhile, here's a legislative update from Secure Idaho. We've got a bunch of bills that we're trying to get passed at the state level because they're not doing anything at the federal level. And all of the good legislation seems to be getting absolutely tanked by Senator Jim Guthrie down in Boise. We had two really good bills, House Bill 700 and 704, that would have actually made it illegal, punishable if you hire illegals. That got thrown out by the dairy lobby. And then Real E-Verify, which got thrown out by the agricultural lobby. So, we've got to fight. Just because there's a war in Iran going on, that doesn't mean that we can let the stuff at home. We got to pay attention. We've got to be able to do everything all at once.
Yes, yes. One thing to note: this goes back to the Bush era. Some of the largest border crossing surges and almost a near successful amnesty passage happened in the middle of the war on terror because they use these conflicts as a way to take otherwise like dissident energy or racial grievance energy and channel it into these very much just Jewish foreign policy plots. And that's the bait and switch. That's the feature, not the bug of the system. And that's one of the problems with the Republican Party is that it's a de-radicalization mechanism that channels dissident energy and diverts it into kosher causes ultimately. And also, for those who have worked in Republican politics, especially with crafting opposition research, they will all tell you from top to bottom, Republicans, all these wholesome chungus, small to medium-sized business owners, and even the corporate bigwigs, they're all attached to like open borders or mass migration Inc. They're beholden to, like, as you mentioned, the dairy lobby, agricultural lobby. Mm-hmm. They're very reliant on cheap labor, whether it's illegal or legal. That's why the Republican Party is structurally incapable of carrying out these type of immigration restriction measures. That's why you have to continue to turn up the heat on these people and build like single issue advocacy organizations to get these people in line, because all things being equal, they're just going to continue to let immigration in, whether it's illegal or legal.
Mm. Yeah, no, but it's also interesting to see there's been some polling that was released this week when it comes to the Republican Party. This comes from the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. I don't know if you've seen this, but apparently 45% of Republicans under the age of 40 say that Jews pose a threat to the American way of life, according to the survey, and that this poll was also carried out before the joint Israel-American attack on Iran. So it does seem like they've lost the youth. We've been talking about that on this program for a little over a year now. The youth is just, they have left the party. They are going their own way. Do you think that we're going to see the Republican Party crash and burn? Or do you think that there's like a possibility to kind of run an insurgency from within, a kind of internal revolution in the Republican Party from these young people? Or do you think that will come too late?
Well, just comment on that poll. This is another reason why post October 7th, organized Jewry installed Trump in office through their support for him for his second term. Because looking at his first term, he already broke tons of taboos on the Israel issue, from the Abraham Accords to recognizing Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights and the assassination of Soleimani and all of that. And he delivered the goods, and that from that point forward, the Jewish lobby saw they were under an existential threat, especially after the rise of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism in the wake of the October 7th attacks. And that's one of the reasons I think Trump right now, they are really pushing him to go to war to continue this conflict in Iran, because this is their last best chance due to the fact that there is a transpartisan consensus emerging against Zionism and Jewish influence in foreign policy and other aspects of American politics. Opinion is that if this anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism wave continues, it could actually realign the entire system. Both Democrats and Republicans could get cleaned out. But there's a lot of tricks that organized Jewry can pull out of their sleeves. They can use a lot of polarization vectors and fake culture war stuff to create divide and rule environments that prevents the coalescing of a coherent movement. And that's why I stress to people they should be focused on this in a very like single issue type of manner that's like transpartisan and that's not explicitly attached to one party or the other, because it's better to create a social movement more so than a kind of like faction within that party. Because whenever you get branded with the GOP or the Democratic Party, you automatically make your message unpalatable to a large segment of the population. But when you're above that and independent, it makes it much more dynamic. And the thing is, both parties are really unpopular in general. Like these elections, when people talk about like Democrats winning the midterms, it's more really like Republicans lost it more so than Democrats, because Democrats too, if you look at polling with regards to them, they're under the water on a lot of issues as well. And that's also a featured out a bug because it creates this weird type of polarization dynamic where you can't have very solid majorities in Congress where you cannot govern on behalf of like Gentile America. But guess what? The House still wins because the only thing that the Congress creators can actually maintain a consensus on is stuff that benefits organized Jewry. So the thing is, both parties are really unpopular, and I suggest that people try to stick to more like single issue anti-Zionism or similar causes and avoid the polarization vortex that is the two-party system.
Yeah, I think that I think there's a lot of truth to that. I just was showing on the screen the image from APAC Tracker that shows. I'll pull it up again, but it shows the vast majority of Congress is just like pro APAC. It is the APAC party.
Oh, insane! Yeah.
It seems like the Democrats have maybe some more independent thinkers, I guess, on their side, but not really. I mean, they're not really that independent. They're pretty NPC when it comes to the gender stuff, the bathroom stuff, all the cultural issues that we seem to, have an issue with. It's just crazy. But where was I going with that? Yeah. There was, this is what happens. See, this is what happens when I have like ADD and I you said something that like triggered me and I was like, Anyway, this is a neurodivergent podcast now. We love our autism. We love our ADD. It helps us to get real deep. It is. So, what about what we're seeing in Europe? Because I've heard from a lot of people, they think that this is the end of Jewish power, that it's all already done, that essentially we've won, that the Jews have lost. Look, there's, populist, nativist, nationalist types of uprisings happening all over Europe. Therefore, it's game over. I've taken a little bit of a different opinion on that, where when we look at groups like National Rally in France, when we look at was it Restore Britain, AFD, FPO in Austria, and even was it Giorgia Meloni's party? They all seem to be Zionists. Am I wrong on that, or am I seeing something? Or are you seeing something different? I guess because I'm just not that hopeful. I don't think that the Jewish power is like de facto over. I think that it's just about to kick up to a new level of intensity, censorship, and fighting. What are your thoughts?
So I've written this article on the Occidental Observer called Ziopopulism, the New Alliance Between Israel and Europe's Nationalists. I think looking back, that title is a bit misleading because his alliance has been actually in effect for better part of a few decades, and some of the similar funding networks that propped up Donald Trump, Zionist and Judaized Gentile networks, are propping up these so-called populist parties in Europe that I think are just stalking horses for Zionist interests, because Europe in general, and it's not just because of the Muslim populations there, there's always been anti-Semitism in Europe from the beginning. And this is a civilization that has interacted with Jews for over a millennia, and it's always had problems with that cohort. And what's happening is that the organized Jewish community has had to take emergency measures, especially in the aftermath of October 7th, to prop up these parties so that they can have like an opposition force in European politics that will make the continent safe for Jewry, or at least implement policies that don't directly challenge like Israel or any elements of the international Jewish community. For example, you have like Spain, which has a really libtarded global homo government that's actually gone off script on the Israel issue. The Prime Minister Pedro Gonzalez was one of the few Western leaders to call out Trump's attacks against Iran. And that's why they're popping up the Vox party there, which is a total Reaganite, pseudo-populist Zionist cutout there. And these parties, they talk a big game about immigration restriction. But the funny thing is, they'll talk about Muslim immigration, but they're perfectly fine with having Hindu nationalist fanatics come in by the millions, or even increasingly sub-Saharan Africans that are of Pentecostal or evangelical confession come in by the millions. And I've done research on this too, from Hindu nationalism to these Pentecostal movements in Kenya and Nigeria, is that these are new golems that the world Jewish community are propping up to use in a manner to create like a new managerial class in the US and Europe that is more amenable to Jewish interests. Because now it's clear that the organized Jewish community, they can't trust anyone. They can't trust the average liberal under 40. Heck, they can't trust the average Republican under 40 now. So they're gonna have to import new people, and there are plenty of people in the global South that are evangelical kooks that make American evangelicals look sane in comparison, and Hindu nationalists that are anti-Muslim and that have been philo-Semitic from the jump to do this type of work. And that's another part of this emergency measure. That's why you see a lot of these populists too. The National Conservative Organization, run by the dual national Yoram Hazony, they've not only brought in Euro populists, they've also brought in people from the Modi government in India to talk about nationalism and all of that. And that's part of this op, in my opinion, to create fake populist dissent that is in line with Jewish interests.
Yes. Hold on a second. We are having a little bit of a technical issue on the internet. I think Elon Musk has turned my internet off. Well,
yeah, this conversation got too spicy.
Yeah, clearly. Well, I guess I might have to hold on a second. Let me see if I can. It's just not even. It's not even letting me into the app. Here we go. Hold on. Sorry about this, everybody. I'm gonna try to get this back up and running because I think it nuked us off of Rumble. We can still we'll wrap up and finish on the recording. Well, anyway, I guess my hands are kind of tied on this. I literally cannot. It's not letting me in. Okay. Well, anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm not going to be able to pull up any more tweets or supporting videos or anything like that, unfortunately, because this internet problem. Geez, but tell everybody, please, where can they find your work? Where can they subscribe to you? You're over on X, Jose Al Niño, and over on Substack, Jose josealnino.org. It's not letting me get to the main page, but if you have anything else you'd like to add?
It's all good. Yeah, you can follow if you want to become a paid subscriber to my Substack so you can gain access to my members-only live streams where I take Q&As from all my readers, my paid subscribers. You just join that at josealnino.org and just become a paid subscriber there. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Jose Niño. And then I write I'm obviously the deputy editor at Headline USA. You can find it there. I do contribute to other websites like the Occidental Observer and the Libertarian Institute. So if you want to follow some of my work on Jewish influence or just geopolitics, you go to either Libertarian Institute's more geopolitics, while Occidental Observer, I look at some of like the inner workings of like the Jewish community and the moves they make right now. So yeah, follow me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really a pleasure talking to you. We look forward to having you back, and we'll keep the discussion going. So thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Thank you so much. I had a great time, man.
Awesome.
Take care.
Cheers. Sweet. Awesome. Well, it's unfortunate, man, that this the internet problem happened, but whatever. We move on. I think he's got some really, really good stuff. We've got to be careful, especially here in the West, that we're not going to get hoodwinked into supporting some of these Zionist parties and cutouts that are getting propped up all across the West. I really wanted to get into more stuff with Spain, but well, next time we have him on, that'll be good. Before we go, let me just check. I don't think we really got any super chats this go around, which is fine. I will cut you all a break. But we've got some really interesting stuff that's coming up. I'm thinking about doing a couple of documentaries. So we'll get you some more info on that as we get it. But need to tell you about our sponsors because they make this program possible. odggsupply.com for all of your tactical and military surplus needs. They've got all kinds of stuff from thermal night vision to body armor, accessories for your weapons. Am I allowed to say that on YouTube? Hopefully. But odggsupply.com, whether it's blanky mode or tactical mode, they've got you covered. You can use promo code BACKLASH14 and you will get 14% off select items. And if you use, I think, promo code BACKLASH25, you might even get free shipping too. So definitely check out their stuff. We've got a lot of good content coming up, by the way, with Alex and some of the guys at ODGG Supply. So please visit them at odggsupply.com. Get kitted out and make sure you follow them on X, on Instagram, on Rumble. Also got to give shout outs to Above Time Coffee Roasters. They are pro-white, small batch, hand roasted, non-kosher coffee from Pennsylvania, and it is delicious. Their golden blonde roast, the light organic New England roast, absolutely stellar. You don't need sugar or creamer in it, but hey, if you want to do like a homemade latte, they taste great. So please visit AboveTimeCoffee.com. You can use promo code BACKLASH10 and get 10% off your order. And our friends at Antelope Hill Publishing, they're fighting to keep history alive amidst a regime of anti-white censorship. Then they're providing the tools necessary to help people like you and me fight back. They've got a varied catalog, including a newly updated and expanded third edition of Kevin MacDonald's Culture of Critique, the essential modern text on Judaism, Dr. Ricardo Duchesne's magnum opus, Greatness and Ruin, the definitive scholarly examination of European exceptionalism, as well as works by Kerry Bolton, Paul Kersey, and Josh Neal. Antelope Hill recently brought David Irving's iconic Nuremberg, The Last Battle back into print and have numerous translations of historical works from eras such as Fascist Italy, National Socialist Germany, Civil War Spain, all previously unavailable in English. There are also plenty of books on contemporary issues such as transgenderism, the opioid crisis, and Christian nationalism, as well as history books, novels, and children's books. So whatever your interest is, you're bound to find something that you'll like at Antelope Hill Publishing. And if you use promo code BACKLASH10, you'll get 10% off your order. And there is a new book that they just put out, and I'm very pleased that I have a copy. This is the Essay Cleans Up by Heinz Lohman. I'm going to be reading this, and I'll get back to you next week. Wow, I just opened it up to a page, and it said Antifa. There's Antifa in Germany? Get out. I had no clue. I'm kidding, of course. But the essay Cleans Up by Heinz Lohmann. Hopefully going to give this a read, and we'll get back to you. Maybe even do a podcast with some of the guys from Antelope Hill. This is going to be my. How do you think it's going to work out? I'm going to be on the plane this week, just reading this book. You think people are going to look at me funny? Probably. But by the way, I am going to be going to New York. New York, I'm leaving a little bit later today. We'll be flying in and hanging out in Manhattan, a little bit of Long Island. So if you're out that way and you're watching this podcast, please get in touch with me. I've got open DMs on X. You can DM The Backlash. You can send an email at info@thebacklash.net. If you are in New York, I'd love to grab a beer with you. Go out, maybe have a smoke or something. I don't know. But get in touch with me. It'll be a good time. I'm trying to get together with Benny and Basil too. So we'll see how that goes. But speaking of this Wednesday, then because I'm not going to be here to do the show live, we did a interview with the one and only American Reform, and so that will be broadcast on Wednesday. We covered three main topics. Number one being Catholic race theory, kind of clearing up some of. There's been a debate about whether or not Christ cucks can acknowledge the reality of race and racial differences. And so we talked about that. We talked about just war theory. And we talked a lot about whether or not Catholicism and Zionism are compatible. I think we all already know that they aren't. But American Reform brings the receipts. He's done all the research and a lot of brand new translating from some older publications. And so I think you'll really enjoy that conversation. That will be airing on Wednesday evening. And then we will be back in the saddle for the rest of the month. And we've got some interesting collaborations coming up too. Sarah Bills of DD Geopolitics is going to be coming to town. Looking forward to hanging out with her. We'll put out some content. Also, Brother Nathaniel. I think we're going to be getting together with Brother Nathaniel in the next couple of weeks. So that'll be fun as well. But keep a close eye. Once we get past this week, I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that you're going to enjoy. Also, next month, there's going to be an event happening here in North Idaho. If you're interested in homesteading, if you're interested in, leaving the city behind and moving to the country, this event is going to be for you. And so we'll have more details on that as we get closer. What else did I want to mention to you? I got to mention North Idaho Tallow Company. They are in the middle of a rebrand. So there's going to be some new packaging. Very exciting to see these guys grow. They make soap and skincare products without endocrine disruptors. And I recently found out what that actually means. And so apparently with soap and skincare, the moisturizers, whatever, the stuff that it's made out of, the chemicals that the soaps are made out of, these modern soaps, Irish Spring, Dove, whatever, it's all petroleum byproduct. And you're sitting there in the shower, you're hot, your pores are open, and you're smearing this waste product all over your body. Well, what's happening is it's lowering people's testosterone. In women, it's disrupting their reproductive system. That's what an endocrine disruptor does. And so if you're concerned about the fertility crisis that is affecting the West, white people, then you probably want to stop using soap and skincare products that are contributing to that problem. And you can do that with idahotallow.com. All orders over $100 ship for free, and there will be a flash sale over the next couple of days, I think, from these guys. So we will let you know when we know more about that, but please visit idahotallow.com and also atlasbullion.com/backlash. If you've been following the markets with this war that's been breaking out Everything's going crazy. Crude oil is up over $100. Inflation is about to skyrocket. You want to be saving your money in a form that cannot be debased or seized by the government. And that means holding your own gold and silver from Atlas Bullion. You can automatically stack precious metals the easy way with their gold and silver subscriptions as low as $55 a month. That's how I save. I think that's how you save, how you should save. And listen, if you listen to us when we first started advertising Atlas Bullion, you would be up over 100% on both gold and silver. So I'm just saying, there's a lot of craziness going on with this war, but there's also a lot of opportunity. And congratulations to everybody that maybe bought some oil stocks. I lost a shit ton of money. This past go around, I remember last year when we did Operation Midnight Hammer, I bought a bunch of oil stocks thinking that they were going to close the Straits of Hormuz, and they didn't. The cost of oil went down, and I got wrecked in my position. So hopefully you're doing better gambling on the markets than I am. But anyway. What else? Was there anything else that's going on? Not really. Gonna be a big week. Gonna have some big updates for you. And yeah, I really would like to. I'd really like to make some different content for you guys coming up here in the next few months. I think, the history of North Idaho is really, really interesting when it comes to backlash, when it comes to internal mass migration, when it comes to illegal immigration. There are some stories from Idaho's past that I think are important for America's future. And so I'd like to help present some of that stuff to you. Also, it'd be, I think, very good to do something about what had gone on up here in the 1970s and 80s when it comes to things like the Aryan nations. People are still very skittish and upset about that period of time. It's like a black cloud that hangs over the region, and people are constantly like, oh, this is just like the days of the Aryan nations. And it's like, well, what were those days like? I think it's worth exploring, and I think that I don't think that anybody's really put out any kind of documentary or video going through the newspapers, going through the headlines, and showing you what it was actually like and what was motivating some of those people. So I think it would be interesting, and we'll have some updates for you on all of that. What else, man? What else? Well, thank you for sticking through the internet difficulties. Elon Musk, I'm gonna have to call him down to the office. We're gonna have to have a little talk about this internet bullshit. This is crazy. Thank you again for watching. Make sure that you like this video, share the stream with your friends, your family. Make sure you're signed up for our email list on our website, thebacklash.net. You can also find all of our platforms, thebacklash.net/subscribe. Make sure that you are on all of those there, and we will be back. Like I said, Wednesday, we'll have a great show for you with American Reform, and then some dynamite content for the rest of the month. So thank you for watching and tuning in. God bless you. Have a good week. Bye-bye.